You're listening to She's the Business podcast.
Okay, I'm here with Jill Romig. Jill, how are you today? So happy to have you here on the podcast.
I am very happy to be here and thank you for having me.
Yes, so welcome, so welcome. Now I'm really excited to jump into this topic today and uncover, I guess, what we see women who are successful but who are still kind of maybe not quite achieving what they feel their potential is, or feeling that bit stuck, and they're just wanting to have that better life, that next stage of life, feeling great, exactly into their power. Now, I know you've got so much to share with us on that, but can you tell us a little bit about your business? Who do you serve? What is it that you do with them today?
I work with women, primarily women entering the next stage of life. I am 57, so my demographic is roughly around my age and older. I have worked with younger women because it all depends on when you're going through that. Everybody has their own period. And I think I went through this when I was a little bit younger also, where I kind of, it was not really having my footing. I wasn't really sure of where I was and what I wanted to do, and if I was heading in the direction that I wanted to be headed in. And there were a lot of things that were up in the air. My husband and I had just moved to California from North Carolina. Our kids were grown and gone. And it was the first time that I was kind of on my own. So that was like my late 40s. And it was just him and I for the first time. And we didn't have we had no debt, we had no problems, but we, as you grow older, you kind of maybe just kind of get used to a pattern of living and you don't necessarily connect the way that you think you're going to be connecting. And that's kind of where it all started for me as far as my personal development journey. And so back then, that was like 2011, we had just moved to California. And things were going like south. And it was, we had been married, I guess, 12 years at that time. And I mean, long story short, we nearly got a divorce, and it was all because of my behavior. And it wasn't until then that I realized, like when I was about to blow up my marriage, that I was blaming everything that had ever gone wrong in my life on my husband. Poor guy. Like the fact that he stuck around just makes me love him even more, because we are still married 25 years later. But I never processed stuff that happened when I was a kid, like anything and everything. There were so many things that I just buried down and moved forward with, and became a very high achieving, successful CPA, passed the exam first time around, graduated top of my class, like high achieving individual. And thought that the best way, because I didn't have the upbringing to learn how to process your emotions and things that happen, like normal things that happen, I just moved forward and just like, it's in the past and I don't need to talk about it. Look how productive I am. Look how high achieving I am. I'm fine. And it wasn't until I nearly blew up my marriage is that I took a look within and started to realize that I needed to do some healing. And that's been the journey that I've been on. And what I've realized more recently is that as I've been wanting to help women for the past 10 years, find their voice, dump the front, become more, energetic, enjoy their life, I never was kind of touching the problem. And the problem of why they aren't feeling authentically themselves is because they have these things that they don't even realize that are under the surface, that are just holding them back from being their true authentic selves, from them showing up the way they really want to in the world. And that's when I help a female get the awareness and the tools to process and move forward. It's life-changing. It really is.
Oh my goodness. Just so much in that, because I was just thinking, you were a successful CPA, everything in life is like tick, 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 debt-free husband, career, like everything's amazing. And yet here you were kind of internally just feeling
never more miserable in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you're saying as well, so many people who are in that place are probably going, right, well, yeah, I need to just learn how to be more authentically me. And so they're probably going, well, I need to change my wardrobe, or I need to do this and that. And they're doing all of these things, which, as you've just said, it's that's kind of and then they're still there. They're still feeling the same and still feeling not like themselves, right? What do you
Right. And
think?
it's not even necessarily, they don't even realize that it's so under the surface and the way it shows up, because here's the signs, like the symptoms that this might be something that you need to look at, is that your response to a situation isn't in alignment with what's going on. So like, say he would maybe come home 10 minutes late. I might give him the silent treatment for 2 days. Like, I mean, I was extreme. Like, I was really extreme. Maybe I'm embellishing, but like, I would overreact. Like, if you overreact, and I didn't think I was overreacting at the time. Like, I thought that, whatever it was he did, it was, his fault. Or with my kids, sometimes I would just like be very rigid with my, I would say boundaries, but they weren't really, they were controls. Like you feel like you have to have control of everything so that you can keep order in your life. Like if something is up in the air and you don't know, if you can't plan it down to the detail, that's a sign that there's, if you're not flexible with your time, if you're really rigid with things, that's definitely a sign. If you have when you don't know how to have a conversation and you just blow up and then you just kind of stew about it. If you can't come back and say, hey, I feel this about this way, or we didn't have those kind of conversations. We just blew up and then we just let it until it, like he could come back the next day and go, is everything okay? And I'd be like, I'm not talking to you still. I just was still very, very, and that's extreme. That's definitely extreme, but these are just like signs. If you have an inability to just like process a conversation, like when I say it, I think, oh gosh, everybody probably thinks that it's normal to have a normal conversation and what's wrong with her. But really, there's a lot of people that don't know how to process anger, process frustration, process jealousy, process any of those emotions that feel uncomfortable. They show up in your body and you get flush and you don't know why you're reacting the way you're reacting. You just feel justified and then you move on and you kind of compartmentalize these things. And it's interesting because now when I go back and I look and I can witness from a distance, it's like, wow, and now that I've been doing it, I can like, my whole family is like, you are like such a different person. And it's almost like I've just released so much that I can show up genuinely present, actually present and not reflecting on things that happened a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago. Like, I'm not drudging it. Like before I thought I had it in the past and I was carrying it with me, but now I'm like, I am truly free, and I feel like it'll haunt you if you've never processed it, whatever it is. And like I said with you earlier, it could be something as little as getting in trouble when you're 6 years old as a kid by your teacher and not understand what you did wrong and not have the wherewithal to process that and think that you're bad or something was your fault versus, or have a parent that maybe wasn't around. Like, heck, when I was a kid, and I don't know your age, but they actually had a news announcement at 10 o'clock and it'd say, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? Because we'd be out and about. Like, and that was actually normal for my generation because, we were out like bikes and playing kick the can or whatever. But, so kids had free reign of doing whatever they want. But also they didn't have the structure and the parenting necessarily that they needed. So, my parents grew up hippies, so like, it was a little different,
Yeah. I think it's hard as well because I look back and I think, I probably as well was never coached in how to process emotions as a child. And I think that my parents, they obviously were doing the best job that they could and they're very loving, that, it's a lovely environment, but I don't think they knew how to help me do it either. So because they grew up in a place where it was even less common to talk about that stuff, right? So, you can kind of see like there is no blame there, but it's so interesting where we've got to these days where there's so much awareness that we're creating and being able to process. And
I think it's amazing. My son and his wife were living in Morocco. My kids were born there. They lived there for the past 10 years. Last July, they moved to North Carolina. went to visit them last Thanksgiving, so 2 Julys ago, I guess. They are 8, well, they're 9 and 7 now, but then when they were 8 and 6, they got awards at their school. Eleanor got an award for thinking about her thinking, and Abraham got an award for controlling his impulses. And I'm like, if they had taught me that when I was in 6th grade, I might have, not had these problems, but like, wow. I can't, this is North Carolina, and North Carolina is not necessarily known for its forward thinking, but I was pretty impressed with the school system. And like, wow, that just blew my
amazing,
mind.
Isn't it? Because, from, as I understand it, and I'm certainly nowhere near an expert at all, and I'm interested to hear your take on it, when we have things that happen when we're young, and I think that the ages are like 5 to 7, often where a huge amount of stuff happens, your brain is very fresh and new, and you experience something.
And that's when our personality is being developed.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. And that's a lot of time, like, I don't mean to interrupt you, but like, that's so important, that time of our life. And our parents maybe not knowing that, and not, or our teachers not realizing that, or, and not taking us aside. So like we had talked about the thing that had happened when you were, what grade were you in when you were on the line?
I was 5 years old.
So, and that can, so I don't know if you want to share, because I know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Know what I'm referring to.
So, I mean, what's interesting is probably 2 really, really vivid memories that I have from 5 years old when I started school that I can bring back exactly the visual image, how I was feeling, everything, the emotion, the whole lot. Like as if it had happened yesterday, last week. It's amazing.
Crazy,
now
right?
I'm 45, so that was like 40 years ago.
Right.
One of them,
but it lives in your body. That kind of like any kind of a mental trauma that, like, even if it seems so innocent or not, like not that big of a deal in the broad and big picture, it can really affect you going forward.
Well, this is like, no, it's good. I love that we're explaining it, because these, we're calling it trauma, and it's not necessarily like trauma like you think of as major trauma. Like, this is literally a minor incident now. You think, at the time, I didn't even tell my parents about it because I thought I'd get in trouble. So
exactly, and that is exactly what I'm referring to, because you thought you'd get in trouble, or you thought you did something bad, or you thought, I must be a bad person. This is how a 5-year-old's going to interpret a situation, when it could have just been the teacher had something else going on,
Yeah. So, for everybody's benefit, I was 5 years old and we'd been doing painting. It was the first year at school. Obviously, there's a lot of arts and craft. I'd finished my painting, and so I started to hop in the classroom because I just learned how to hop on one leg, and I wanted to practice, as you would as a 5-year-old kid. And I got absolutely roasted for it by my teacher. So she told me off, obviously in front of the whole class. And then when it was mat time, story time, I wasn't allowed to sit on the mat. I had to go and sit on the line at the back of the classroom on my own. And I was...
Have you had a conversation with this teacher?
Devastated. I was devastated. Like, I was, a really good student. I was always being the, and maybe there's some stuff in that as well, right? Being the good girl, like I'd finished early because I'd done my work, and here I was, instead of being rewarded or even like, wow, hey, you're doing a great job, and oh, look at you hopping, which I thought was something I was proud of myself for learning, right? Instead, I actually had the carpet ripped out from underneath me, like almost literally, right? And that was, I mean, obviously I never processed it at the time. I don't know what I made it mean, but I clearly, as you're saying, this is like a form of undiscovered trauma that I've obviously carried with me since the age of 5. And then, only recently I'm like, well, what did I make that mean back then? And then how is that showing up now in my life? It's like, no matter what I do or how hard I try, it's never good enough. Or, maybe I'm always going to do it wrong. Maybe even though I think I'm doing a good job, it's always going to be wrong. And so I get so worried about it. And I think this is what you're speaking about. That's
definitely
right?
A sign that it's something to release, because what happens in that age or time frame of when you're that age is that, like I said, our personalities are being developed, but our core beliefs about ourselves. So if that was such an event that triggered or stayed with you for so long, you definitely, there's some kind of meaning you put towards it about who you are, about who, your core personality was somehow identified during that time based on whatever you made it mean. And I remember when we did this inner work, James had said something like, what could the teacher have meant, or what could her perspective so we kind of take a step back and be the watcher and kind of like replay the story and go slower and think of other things that could have happened so that we gain a broader perspective instead of just the 5-year-old little girl who's getting reprimanded for not knowing what she's getting reprimanded for, like that poor little girl, right? And so that's like a great example of something that is traumatic to a child that you didn't even tell your parents.
No, because I thought I must have been terrible. I got so told off for it.
Can you imagine, right? So like, you just want to hug that little girl, right? Like if, to have the courage to say this happened, like that would have been tough. So I feel like there's a lot out there that women just don't even realize that that's why they're showing up the way that they're showing up. And it doesn't have to be as crazy as my behavior, because I had a lot of things go on, and I had layers for me. So there took me a lot of layers to go through to get to where I am now. And like I said, 13 years later, my husband and I are about to celebrate our 25th anniversary, and we have never been better or closer or tighter. Thank God he stuck it out with me, because poor guy, I put him through hell.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because I think that, for you to feel like you're being your authentic self in your business or in your life, it doesn't even matter what it is. It's like whatever that is that you're feeling like you're struggling with. Well, you're right. Maybe there are things that come back to it. And, as a 5-year-old, I had a girl on my first day at school. So I obviously had a great time back when I was 5. She told me that I couldn't play with my best friend because my eyes were too big. She didn't obviously like how I looked. No, stop joking. I still remember the girl's exact name. I know her name. And it was like, again, so you think, well, if that 5-year-old then was like, well, I can't be me and there's nothing I can do about my eyes because I can't change them, to suddenly be hating something that my mum was always telling me was one of my best features, and, you should love your eyes. And I'm like, but that's not what, this girl said.
No one says that.
Do you believe your mum or do you believe the kid at school? Well, you kind of, I know.
So, and that's another thing that, like, if you notice that you are seeking external validation for your personal, you'll know that you are being your authentic self when you don't need anybody else's approval for anything. And that's when you come into your own and you do have your voice. And then it's it's a choice whether or not you want to fight that battle or this battle or bring it up or however you want to handle it. But knowing that it doesn't matter, they can be wrong about me and I'm okay with that. Like that is a step in the right direction. Like one of my core things is like feeling, or one I've had to get over was feeling like I wasn't considered. Right. That's something that really prevented me from showing up, authentically, because I felt like I was undervalued. I wasn't valuable. Like I think you can take down many different layers. And so I was constantly needing approvals. So getting all good grades, getting, graduating, to all those things was trying to get me to feel better by other people telling me. So you outsource your decision making, you outsource your approvals, they're going to tell me what I need to do. They're going to tell me how I need to behave. They're going to tell me what's good about me. And you lose yourself in that.
Yes.
You're not your real self. And it's hard to identify. Like you really need to take time to journal, ask yourself questions. What is it that I really want? How is this serving me? Is this serving me? Really take the time. Like I would go through books and I'd read them and then I'd take notes, but I just kept moving forward and I wasn't stopping and doing the work. And you actually got to stop and do the work. You know what I mean? You can't just keep reading, oh, this must be it. This must be it. And you just keep moving.
Yeah.
If you don't go back and just actually take the time and meditate and regulate your emotional system. Like that was the biggest thing for me, is to learn how to regulate my emotions. And there's a simple way to do that. It's like you ask yourself, because our brains always tell us, our brain wants us to be safe, right? So our first fight, flight, freeze thing is like your brain thinks that you're not safe. So you ask yourself, am I physically safe? And our brain wants to say no, but I'm here. I'm like, we're doing a podcast. It may seem scary, but I'm actually very safe, right? But do I feel safe? Well, that's where your brain is going to say, no, but I am safe. So then you find where in your body that you're feeling that anxiety or whatever that emotion is, that buzziness. And then you just direct your attention there and you calm it down. And that's how, a really great way to learn how to regulate your emotions in the moment.
Yeah, amazing. So when you've got somebody who, comes to you and says, Jill, I really need help. I've read the books, I've done everything, or I've got it all on paper. I'm just not feeling like a real mess, or my life is going to fall apart. What kind of process or how do you help them to uncover these things? And, obviously we can't go through everything in an episode, but just tell us a little bit about how that works or what you do.
So the brain is a very interesting tool that we have. Our brains are so powerful. And what I teach what I learned. So I'm a certified life coach through the Life Coach School. And what we do is the model. And the model is just a way that you understand like everything that happens in your body and your life and your world is, first there's a circumstance and it's neutral, and having to understand that a circumstance is neutral and what makes it neutral is step one. But then we have context, thoughts, what we make it mean. And those thoughts drive or generate feelings, and our feelings drive our actions, and our actions create the results that we live. So that's my first, we just do a basic teaching of the model, and I take them through some examples of how that works. So it helps them understand how their thinking is creating their reality. Now, what's different with how our bodies react to a trigger, it's not a thought, it's a body, it's an emotional reaction to something that is lying underneath. And so what I would do with a person, if they came to me with a specific problem, or maybe they don't know what the specific issue is, they just feel stuck, we would go through a series of questions until we kind of uncovered the area that is where they're most held back. We just go through a battery of questions, and we just kind of work through each area individually. So say it's something like I feel like I can't go live on Facebook because I'm really nervous about doing that. So then we just kind of go through, well, what's the worst case scenario? And we just kind of go through the mindset behind it. There's so much that our brain will do for us once we find that alignment with understanding that our brain and understanding the motivational triad. Our brains want to keep us safe. Our brain wants to be efficient, and it does not, danger, anything that's possibly, even if staying the same is uncomfortable, it's a familiar uncomfortable, and our brain will always fight for that. And so knowing that the way our brain works is a huge education, and it helps you understand why you behave the way you do, that we're tribal, that we want to be part of the group. So when we're not part of the group, our brain freaks out. But everybody's going to be unique, and you can't always be a part of the group. And being able to understand that your brain's trying to freak you out about being isolated, that you have to be okay with where you are and be okay with being who you are, and talk yourself off that ledge that your brain wants to put you out there on when you step out of your comfort zone. I mean, that's what they mean by the comfort zone. It may not be very comfortable, because doing something else is even scarier than the uncomfortable comfort zone, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. So you kind of uncover where it is that they are really feeling stuck, and get to that kind of root cause of why they feel unsafe doing it. And then to link it up to, I guess, you're then looking into the past to sort of try to find out.
So where does it show up in other places in their lives, right? So really getting clear on the feeling and the emotion and where they remember it happening first. Like kind of like how James did the inner work stuff with you. It's very similar to that, how you get started, just to find, and lots of times they know a story or they know an event or they know something, but they don't understand how that's affecting them now because it's in the past. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's just a matter of processing it, learning, because they've either pushed the emotion down and either buffered with drinking, buffered with TV or social media or eating, whatever, like so that they don't have to deal with their emotions. Like most of our problems that we have in the US, at least, it's an underfeeling problem and not an overeating or a over drinking or over something. It's an underfeeling. Like they're not capable of processing and feeling their emotions because they were never taught as kids growing up how to, it's okay to be sad. It's okay because we're not supposed to be happy all the time. And so it's like not something that needs to be fixed. It's just something that needs to go through. And it's kind of like 90 seconds of a wave of an emotion will go through you and pass it through. And then you'll have a thought and it might come back. Like, you know, like regret. If you think about when you regret something, it's like you think of, oh God, you know, like I did that thing or whatever it is. It's a wave of emotion that goes through you. And you've just got to realize that it's created, those kinds of emotions are created from a memory and you're bringing it back to your present, right? Whereas a trigger that's not a thought thing is like, if something happens, like, so I guess like what I was saying about one of my core things was that not being considered. So if I came home and my husband wasn't home, but he was supposed to be home and he didn't leave me a note, that would trigger me because it was a courtesy thing to me. Like if he cared about me, he would have let me know where he was going to be. And that would manifest in like a bunch of different arguments and between us because I'd feel like he just left. Like he had nothing to do with me. You know what I mean? It wasn't, you know, like he thought I was going to be back. I was at home early or whatever the scenario was, I would make it mean so much more, you know, and it would just trigger me. And because I had that core belief that I wasn't considered. So getting aware, you know, catching on to yourself is just huge. And then, you know, and then there's some things that like maybe you want to be mad about something, you know, like maybe that's something that you want to say, okay, this is a request that I have, and you know, and I appreciate for you to, you know, respect it, but you can't control people, you know, you can say what you want, and you can be mad about it if you want, if they don't do that, but you're never going to control people. That's not going to happen.
Oh, it's so true. It's amazing, isn't it? Like so much that you learn, you think, would have been great to know a lot of this earlier on.
So much. So anyway. That's what's so great for my grandkids. And even my youngest daughter, my stepdaughter, my husband's daughter, I met her when she was 4. So she's 32 now. And she has gone through this gratitude training when she was like in her mid-20s. And I mean, her and I get along so great, and she's just a light, like a bright light, like because she's so, I'm like, gosh, I mean, I don't wish my life away, but I wish I had that understanding, and like, she's just so present, and just like, she puts her phone down when, you know, we have dinner. She's not stuck on her phone. She's just different. And it's an amazing thing. To see that, like, she just, you know, and I think that more and more, you know, it's happening in bits and pieces, like different areas and age groups, you know, because there are a lot of people her age that are still very much on their phone, I'm sure, you know, so it's a give and take, you know, it's not a blanket statement, but for her girlfriends are all into that, you know, they're into the woo and they're young. You know, I wasn't into the woo that young.
No, I just didn't even know it existed. And then I look back now and I think, gosh, it's amazing, isn't it? Because, you know, you might have a big reaction, like you say, to something. And, you know, when you were telling your story, I was like, of course, stories start floating into my head of like, oh, I did a massive reaction back then. I can kind of pinpoint some, right? And then now I'm asking the question, well, okay, that was probably me actually being triggered because of something that's happened even further back than that. And I don't know what that is now, but that's a really interesting thing to kind of have a think about and explore. yeah, like unless we kind of go right back and find that, whatever it was when that belief or thought was formed, then it's just going to keep on happening, isn't it? Like,
yeah, you have to be diligent because you'll fall back into old patterns, even if you do, like, say you do recognize what it is, but if you don't continue to vet it and process it, it will continue to haunt you. It will continue to show up in sneaky little ways, like self-sabotage, or not letting yourself make commitments to yourself and then you break them. So one of the first things that I do with my clients is small promise to yourself. So for me, it started with okay, and it's a self-care thing. It could be anything, but it's something that you want to do. But mine was like every day, because I wasn't drinking enough water, I'm going to drink a full glass of water before I have my coffee. And then doing that every day and having your back and continuing to do that. It's amazing how often that we can make a commitment and keep it to somebody else, but not to ourselves, and so being able to do that, and then like incorporating 20 minutes of meditation or journaling every morning, or just adding on after you've made it a habit, a self-care habit, then you add on another, and it's whatever you want it to be, reading 10 minutes in the morning, or whatever it is. But I think that's another way to build your own resilience within yourself and reliance on yourself to be able to have your back, basically, and can't know that you can go within to find the love that you need.
Yeah, you just had a few what was the word, examples of how somebody might be feeling, or how it's showing up, and then where they've got some of these, we'll call them unprocessed traumas, with the caveat that this isn't like major trauma that you should see a therapist for, but these are things that have happened in your past that have causing you to think and behave in the way that you are now. You kind of mentioned some of the things that you might just be doing. Is there something that you see commonly, like, what is that point at which someone gets to where they are like, this has been happening, or, and they come to you because they're like, oh, I'm just done. I've tried everything and I can't make it happen. What are they commonly experiencing?
Sometimes it could be just about weight loss, that they just feel like like that last 10, like they just keep putting themselves through this like hamster wheel of a circle, or they just get confused, like a confusion circle, where they just feel like they don't know what the next step is, but they really do. It's when you feel stuck about something that if you just relax and made a decision and move forward, it's like being afraid to move forward with something unknown, like taking a chance, being the scientist, testing things out. Not being able to do that is a sign that you're withdrawn, or you're holding on to something that you need to let go of. Self-sabotage is the biggest one, like just making plans, and then so some examples of things that for me personally I could say that I would do are like, okay, I have this week planned out, and then my husband would travel, and then because I rarely watch TV, I would start to watch a TV show at 9 o'clock at night when I really just needed to go to bed. And then I'd stay up until 3 a.m. because I'm binge watching some series, sabotaging my next day, so then I'm not fully present. I'm not, 100% healthy feeling. I'm tired. And then I've got to do a live, or I've got to do this. Like, that's a super sign. Like for me, that was something I just had to stop doing. I just like stick to the schedule. Why do you want to, if you want to watch something, fine, let's do one episode. And if you can't shut it off, then you need to not watch it, like, because I would get hooked. I'm like, I forget about that throne thing. I will never watch the Game of Thrones because there's just too many of them. I'd be in like a week.
You just need Netflix to stop putting the next one on. Like, just have something comes up. This is enough for you now.
Yes, flashing at your something. Yeah. But yeah, that would be what I would do to myself. I would just, and it's like you can same thing with overeating. Like, I know I don't have this problem, but like I have lots of clients that have struggled with not like eating when they're just not even hungry. They're not even hungry, but they're just they feel they need something and they don't know what it is, and they need to feel their feelings is what they need to do.
I think that's a big one. Like, I definitely notice when I'm stressed, I am a crazy eater, like as in I obviously try to medicate stress with food because food
And
is like
that's
a comfort
so
thing.
common. I mean,
And
that's not abnormal.
oh,
Yeah.
it's so annoying
And
because I actually know I'm doing it. Like last night, came home, I'd taken my daughter to the gym for 2 hours, came home, it was dinner time. I was already a bit hungry and we hadn't gone shopping. So we just had random things in the house. And my husband had made the kids something and he's like, here, you can have this, like leftover. And I was like, great, I'll have a bit of that, but I wanted to leave some for him. So then I'm like, oh, I'll snack on the carrot. And then we know it's not bad, but then I opened the bag of corn chips. I'm like, I actually know that they don't work well for my stomach, but yet I still opened them and I still ate it. And I didn't, I had more than I should have because my gut doesn't appreciate it when I eat them. Anyway,
so
that's exactly it, right? I knew exactly what I was doing, and I knew when I was doing it that I was doing it. And I'm like, why am I? Stop it.
Yeah.
And
so sometimes it's
on the
just
go
like,
and,
so one of the things I work with my clients after that is instead of, so like say these things happen, right?
Mhm.
It's the next day is to write it down and move on. Like just process the choices that you made, what you were feeling, and try and like get as clear with what was going through your head and write that down and then move on. Like don't beat yourself up. You have to be compassionate to yourself. And that's that was one of the hardest things for me to be, is not because not only was I seeking approval from everybody else, I was beating myself up mentally. It's like, you're so this or that or whatever, that negative chatter that was constantly in your head, my head was. And so it just was, I wasn't very kind to myself. So you've got to have compassion for yourself. You have to recognize that that's normal. And, once you get that dopamine hit of sugar or whatever that's in you, it's like you want to have that satisfaction. You want to have that feel good that you get immediately when you take it, but then it's gone, but then you want it back. And then it's like a vicious cycle that you've got to break the cycle somehow. One of the things that we did in the, I was going to just show you this, that in the, this is jar of colorful stones. And what you do, you start it with empty, and then it's called an urge jar. And the idea is there's 100 beads or stones or whatever. You can make colorful as you want. Or it's a visual thing. So it's empty. And every time you allow an urge, which means like, say you wanted the corn chips, but you don't eat it, and you sit through that emotion of wanting, but don't eat it, you put a stone in the urge jar. And you try every time you allow the urge to pass through you without giving into it, you put a stone in the jar. And the idea for your brain is that it wants to build this jar. So it starts to help you allow the urge instead of giving into it. And it helps you build resilience within yourself as well. And so
I like that.
These are fun really too. Cool. They're really cute.
I like it. Yeah. Beautiful color too. I love that.
I like the blues.
Yeah. And I can, you mentioned a minute or two ago about, just getting stuck in making decisions, and actually maybe even just being fearful about making a decision or moving forward. Like you said, you might be in the comfort zone, which you don't want to be in. But I think that's something I thought, wow, that's so common. And I definitely have experienced it. And then when you can move out of that fear of making a decision and thinking, I have to make it right, and you can move into that place of, you said it's like being a scientist and doing an experiment and sort of allowing yourself to, maybe you've done an experiment that's not actually worked out the way that you wanted it to, or it's not the right thing, and it's okay. What a huge shift that is. Did you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I feel like that's something women struggle with a lot, right? Wanting to make the right decision all the time.
Right. And I think that it stems from, something, again, in your childhood about being wrong, doing something that you were reprimanded for, or somehow you perceive that as being very bad, and didn't have a lot of situations where that happened and everything was okay. It was like really bad. So then you avoided it ever happening again. So like for me, a prime example of this is because I was always like at a very young age, always doing well academically, doing well, never fail, never fail, never fail. Like, our school is getting A's is very important. Getting F's is no good, And so years later, I guess this was when I was in my late 30s, I decided I wanted to go back to college and get my PhD to become a professor for accounting. And because I'd, been a successful CPA, and they had a shortage of accounting professors, and the AICPA, which is an organization, was paying for you to go back to school. But the accounting program was very competitive for the PhD, and you had to go back and take your GMAT. And even though I had taken it years ago and I'd done really well in it, I had worked myself up into this fear of I can't do this. So I completely manifested failure, right? But I was so afraid of everybody's like, oh, you graduated top of the class, of course you're gonna do this. But this was like 10 years later, and I'm like, no, you have no idea how hard it is to get in. Well, when I did not get in, I was devastated because I had never really failed at anything. I had gotten everything I'd always wanted. I didn't fail before. And so I was like, it was like the worst thing in the world. Yeah. And then I didn't want to do it again. Like I didn't want to try anything. So that held me back, So that was like in the late 90s that happened. And I was just like, maybe it was like 2000s. I don't know. How old am I? So I don't know. it's back there somewhere. It's back before we moved from North Carolina to California. So I think it was like, it might have been 2006 or 5 or something like that. Yeah. But anyway, it was like really devastating to me because I hadn't failed before, and I didn't know how that, like, I didn't like the feeling of it. I didn't want to feel that. I hadn't gotten my personal development, this was me like having a freak out, and so it just reinforced that I didn't ever want to fail again. So every decision I made had to be the right one, and so it gets so hard to break free from that if you don't realize that it's okay to fail. It's okay to not do it right the first time. Not everybody does it right the first time every time, and that's just like a education that we all need to have. And it's great to teach your children that, or your grandkids, or as soon as you can, because life, the more you fail, the better off you're going to be, because you can get back up. And I mean, you hear it all the time. I feel like I'm like repeating things that everybody says now, but I feel like there's still people that don't get it, like you gotta fail.
Well, sometimes you have to hear something 20 times before it's like, oh, yes.
It really sinks in.
Yeah, it actually really sinks in. So I don't think we should stop saying what we feel needs to be said. Because, you might go, yeah, I need to fail, and that makes sense. But then I think it's like when you actually really experience it, or you can reflect back and go, oh, that was actually what I really needed now to
be able to say that, right?
Exactly. Because otherwise you're in this happy world of like, I always win, I never fail, and failure, that's fine. It's not until you kind of experience it, you're going through it.
And it was never taught to me as something that I needed to do. It was like failing was bad. Bad. So,
all the expectation. It's like, everybody in the family's always been to university, so it wasn't even a question of whether you would or wouldn't. It was like, you are going to university. Unless you wanted to be a failure, which who wants to, and that was not acceptable. So I don't know if those words ever really came out, but it was always implied because everybody was so intelligent, and you had to be part of the family.
Well, that's interesting, because I was the first that went to college in my family. Like my mom, she did not go to school. My dad never went to college. They, so for me, again, so my parents also divorced when I was little. So I think that there's also like that's not like, I mean, that's so normal. It happens all the time. But when you're young and, it's a very confusing time. And so for me, attention seeking, constantly, getting good grades so that I would be recognized somehow, attention. And so then getting into college and getting a scholarship and, like all the things, it was, again, attention seeking, like really needing validation from my parents, from, my
Yeah.
teachers, from everybody. It's interesting now, understanding and being okay with everything that's happened, and, no blame, no shame anywhere, but it is what it is. And it's interesting to go back and reflect on how things were, and how, I apparently processed things as a child, when now, like, I'm just like, we're going to go spend Christmas with our grandkids, and I'm so excited, like that joy to be like, that's another thing, is the playfulness that we used to have as a kid. We kind of miss, like,
Yeah.
it gets displaced as we get older and we get serious, and we're trying to do all these things. But now, having grandkids, I'm like, we're painting and we're doing jewelry making, and we're just having so much fun, and I'm just excited to be around them. And I just love that their energy is just so free, and
Yes.
it's like a whole new like rebirth for me. Like,
Yeah.
it's a constant journey that's just getting better and better, is how I feel about it.
Oh, that's so cool. Yes, I'm always worrying. I'm thinking, gosh, my kids, they're 6 and 9 at the moment, and, learning all this stuff. I'm like, oh, I wish I'd even known it, years before, because, there might have been, I don't know, have I done the best job I could have? I don't know. And here's me, obviously,
you're not
trying to be a high
perfect, Mom.
achiever. High achieving mom, I need to be perfect. I need to work on this, obviously.
So I'll send you, there's a book that I just finished reading. I don't have it out, and it's Dr. Nicole something. She's really good. It's called Do the Work. I think it's How to Do the Work.
Okay.
It was really good. It was very helpful for me. She is amazing. She has an Instagram account too, but yeah, I really like her work, and I've been doing a lot of research, once I started doing, realizing this is the direction I want to go, because it's been so impactful in my life. And I know that I can help other women change the direction of where they're headed if they don't, wake up, it's truly awakening, like what I was saying earlier, that life's going to pass them by, and I mean, it took me 39 years before I even started to process this. And so,
amazing. And like you said, you were at that point where your marriage was literally about to break apart, and because you managed to do this work and kind of realize and heal some of that stuff in your past, you're still together.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was amazing, because it was interesting, because when we decided we were going to try and figure it out, I had gone to an event, my first event. I don't know if you know Chalene Johnson, but went to her event, and she had an EMDR specialist on stage, and her name was Michaela, and she started giving scenarios. And one of the scenarios, it was like something that Todd and I had happen, and Chalene had said, get Todd to go, and I'll comp his ticket so he could go free. So he came with me, and has she been at our house? Like, because whatever the scenario, I don't remember exactly, but it was, the wife went nuts on it or whatever. And he's like, and so she was offering a 5-day intensive. So that's when I started the EMDR process. And that's really when then I started reading more and studying more. And that was 2012 that I went and got the EMDR. So yeah, we had tried some retreats together. We had tried some other things. That's really when it started to change for me. So.
Oh, that's so amazing. Thank you so much. I think we've just covered so many things.
I know.
Being so open, and I
hope it was understandable.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that all the personal stories, just make it so relatable as well, because, this is common. This is what a lot of us have, even if we're kind of just living through life day to day.
And that's it. And you don't want to be on autopilot. It's time to be conscious to it all, like wake up, like a wake up call.
Yeah. Thank you, Jill. Where can people best find you and reach out to you if they want to, hear,
I have my website, which is www.jillromig.com, but you can put that in the show notes. And if you click on that, you can get access to everything that I have. I also have the magnetic confidence guide, 7 steps to embracing this next stage of life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been really popular, and I've gotten a lot of great feedback for that. I'm putting together a quiz. I haven't finished that yet. It's going to be pretty fun for, knowing what type of person, like what kinds of things that you might want to work on. It's I'm really excited about it, but we have a few more things. I need to make sure it's finished properly. So,
of course.
But other than that, I'm going to be launching my program in January.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, just go to my website, and we can find whatever you want to find on there.
You can find it.
It's all there.
Perfect. Do you have a social platform you love to hang out on?
For Facebook, it's my name, Jill Romig, and then on Instagram, it's just Jill.
It's just Jill. Cool. We will link those up in the show notes as well. But thank you. I think, it's so awesome, and seeing you, such a inspiration and a great role model to people who are in their 50s and you don't look it at all. Women embracing the next stage of life. Absolutely. With all of that energy and life and just having so much fun. I love it.
I love
definitely lots to look forward to. So thank you so much, Jill. We will definitely have all those links in the show notes. So reach out and connect with Jill. Let us know what you loved about this episode as well. If there were anything that sparked a thought or a story, that you would love to share with us, we would like to hear from you. So why not post on your stories and tag us both. And thank you. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.